Welcome to Champions Mojo. Join us for conversations that inspire and empower you as an adult athlete, fitness enthusiast, or master swimmer. Our goal is to make each episode insightful and inspirational and to discover what it takes to build or keep a life of personal excellence. I'm your host, Kelly Pallas, and we're here to champion you. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. I am your host, Kelly Pallas, and as usual, I am with my co-host, Maria Parker. Hey, Maria.
Hey, Kelly. It's great to be with you here today.
Yes, and Maria, this is a special edition of Champions Mojo from the pool deck, and we have a great interview for you today. It's brief, it's short, but it's powerful.
Yeah. I wasn't there, but I was able to listen to the interview and some great takeaways.
Yep, we hope you'll stick around and catch the takeaways. And here we go. I'm doing an on-deck interview with Jonathan Kaplan. He is the head coach of SwimRVA, the Rapids, and I swim on and off with the SwimRVA Hammerheads, which is the master's program. So Jonathan and I have crossed paths at this beautiful facility, SwimRVA. It is just a stellar, unbelievable pool. It was the Olympic trials pool. And Jonathan has built the program here at SwimRVA with these kids. Jonathan, is it true from 0 to over 500 now?
Yeah, we started in 2018. We had 0 swimmers on day one. We grew to about 288 kids in the first 3 to 4 weeks, which was quite remarkable. And now we're in year 6, and I think we've crested the 580 swimmer mark right now and hopefully growing closer to 600 soon.
As someone who swims in the other pool, because we have so many lanes here while you guys are swimming, it seems your swimmers really enjoy practices. Like I'm in the locker room, I see them coming in and out. They seem to be having fun. What's the secret to these kids having so much fun in your program?
Well, that's interesting you say that because you typically get to see them in the morning.
Yes,
and
early.
It's not easy to have fun in the morning because let's face it, waking up at 3:45 or 4 in the morning is not an easy thing to do. But for us, we find that it's more about the environment that you're creating at the practice and the fact that we don't actually have an attendance requirement. So we don't require the swimmers to be at any practice. And that puts a little bit more back on the coaches to have to create an environment that the kids want to be a part of. And so we very much encourage the kids to cheer for each other, to get to know each other, to become friends with each other, be supportive. It's not always perfect because teenagers are teenagers sometimes. But at the end of the day, they have an environment that they want to be a part of and they don't have to be there. And they're all there because they got the same type of goals. They all want to improve themselves. They all want to be faster swimmers. And so that makes the practices a lot more fun to be a part of.
It reminds me a little bit of masters having fun, but that is so wonderful to see. Now, one of the things we have a lot of our listeners are master swimmers, they're triathletes, they're adult swimmers. And maybe they have kids that swim. So I know a lot of the parents who's put their kids in swimming were swimmers themselves. So when I swim in a USA meet and your team is there, you have been so supportive of master swimmers being in a USA meet. What is your thought? Could we encourage other master swimmers to get in a USA meet? What would you say your experience has been watching my husband and I swim in multiple USA meets, and you've been there, your kids have been there. What's been your take on that?
In your case, it's actually twofold. One, because when you are in the pool, and some kids might be like, who's that swimmer in? Or they might not understand or even realize that the senior age group is actually open. So you can literally be any age you want. And some swimmers they didn't even know that. It's not that they think an older person shouldn't be there. It's that they didn't even know if it was allowed. And I just remind them, like, how old do you think a lot of the Olympians are? Oh, they're like 28, 32, 36. Yeah, okay, so they can swim in this meet. If they can swim in the Olympics, they can swim in this meet. But in your case, obviously you've reached very high levels. And so I get to brag on you a little bit and they become a little bit more invested in your success. And I'm like, yeah, she trains right down in the other lanes while you're practicing every single day. So that's really good. You're like the gateway for the kids understanding that swimming is not something that you just do until you're done with high school or you're done with college. And that is very much is in line with the attitude that we take with coaching our kids is we don't want our kids to be so grown down and they hate the sport by the time they get to the end of high school and they're like, I can't get far enough away from a pool. They have the term swammer. I've never liked the term swammer because it's like that's insinuating that you're not a swimmer anymore, but you can always be a swimmer. You just change your approach into what you want to get out of it as you get older. But I don't want to have kids going through our sport that think, once I'm done with high school, that's the end of it for me. I want them to see this as a part of the rest of their life. And even competition can be a part of the rest of their life. I can tell you from experience because I've been that person swimming in the meet. It's really awesome for the kids to get to see people who just swim because they love the sport and they can connect with that. And it just gives me an opportunity to remind them of why they're swimming in the first place. It's not only about the times. It's not only about the records or did you achieve your goal. It's about having a good relationship with the sport that is going to make you a better person. And that literally never stops.
Yes, we're so on the same page. I hate when somebody says they're retiring from swimming. They put a big post on Instagram. I'm retired from swimming. You should never retire from swimming. It is a lifelong sport. Give us a little background on your swimming. You swam at Florida State?
I do.
And then what has your trajectory of your swimming career been? Your own swimming, getting in the water?
Yeah, so I learned how to swim when I was 3. I grew up in Central Florida. I actually swam in the Rowdy Gaines Olympic pool for my whole career. So yeah, Rowdy's from Winter Haven, Florida, the same place. We went to the same high school and everything. So Rowdy's a really good friend of mine, and he actually used to come down while he was doing masters, and he would train with me while when he went to Japan, and he broke every freestyle record, every world record for his age group. Yeah, I have some really good training stories with him when he would come down and stuff. But anyway, so I was very inspired by Rowdy at a young age. I met him when I was 8 and he came to our swim team banquet, and we've just literally been friends ever since then. So I started swimming competitively at 6 and started to reach pretty decent high levels, probably top 3 or 4 in the state until I was 14. And I decided to step away from soccer for 1 year. I played soccer for 8 years and I just stepped away for 1 year. And I said, you know what, I'm not leaving soccer. I'm just going to focus on swimming for 1 year. And my soccer coach was actually unbelievable. And he was incredibly supportive of it. And I can go on and on about the stories about my soccer coach and the impact he had on my swimming career, but that's for another day. But anyway, that 1 year was really good. I ended up being ranked in the top 6 in the country for 13, 14 boys in the 400 IM. Broke the junior Olympic meet record for the state of Florida. So I had some really good swims, and that just catapulted me. I was like, well, I've never looked back with soccer. That was also around the same time when I was about 14 to 15 when I pretty much knew that I wanted to be a swimming coach. I don't think I actually had made that official decision, but looking back, I basically was a coach from the water with a lot of my teammates, not like in a bossy way, but just in a supportive way. I just loved watching my teammates succeed, and that was really important to me. To the point where I don't know, and you probably remember this, but we actually used to have to fill out our times on a piece of paper and turn it in to the meet. And then they would create a heat sheet from that. There was nothing done online because there was no online.
Right. Yeah.
And I used to have all the swimmers from the other team, even when I was 14 or 15, their parents would come up to me and ask me what their kids' best times were because they knew that I knew all the kids' best times because I just love watching my teammates race. So then when I did eventually go to Florida State, I studied sport management because I knew I wanted to be involved in sports right from the get-go, and solidified probably by my sophomore year that I knew I wanted to get into coaching. And I'd been coaching over the summers with my own team back home and in Tallahassee when I was there. So I really started coaching at 18. And then when I graduated from Florida State, I knew for sure I wanted to coach. So I set it up so that I could get the graduate assistant job coaching at Florida State. And this is back when graduate assistants could actually coach. It was weird because I was coaching some of the swimmers that I swam with, but I was also coaching with the coaches who had coached me. But it was a great experience, and I got my master's degree in sport administration. And so having those 2 degrees has been perfect segue for coaching full time because I literally used probably 98% of my degree, both the degrees, every single day. And I got too many college roommates and friends and stuff who got a degree in criminology and aren't doing anything in criminology or something like that. I'm not like that. I knew what I was going to do, and I got into it from the get-go, and I use it every day.
Gosh, I love that passion. That's really beautiful. Do you think that your soccer coach had any influence on you wanting to be a coach?
Oh man, that's interesting. I've always thought so much about his impact on me as an athlete and just the person I turned into. I've never been asked that question before, but now that you ask it, I think 100%. Because the one thing, his name is James Smith, just a phenomenal person. And my head swimming coach, Jim Grazier, the two of them, two Jameses actually, but they were just very impactful on me wanting to be a coach because James Smith, my soccer coach, he just was exceptional about just making you feel really good about yourself. Even when I decided to swim only, I would get a letter in the mail from him and it would just be this, he would use like highlighter and it was just this awesome letter as, hey, you're number one. I really think you're just a great person. And he made me feel awesome about myself. And so I think that's probably where I got the desire to make other people feel really awesome about themselves. And then Jim Grazier, who was my longtime swim coach as a kid, he was exceptional about teaching me how to do that in the swimming world because he didn't grow up as a swimmer. He grew up doing other things and he became a swim instructor who became a coach, and he's a phenomenal coach who never swam before. And so he had to learn a lot of different ways to get kids excited about how they feel about themselves in the swimming world. And so I really learned that from him too.
That's beautiful. So in all these experiences you've had, and I know just having known you for several years, you have lots of fellow coaches that are high-level coaches, Olympic coaches, and you have so much experience with success. What do you think some of the traits that champions share that you see on a daily basis? Not necessarily somebody who's gone to the Olympics, but just these kids are really successful. What do you see that those traits that they share are?
That's a great question. I have been very fortunate over the years to have a lot of good experiences with Olympians, starting with obviously Rowdy at a young age. I've got to coach several who went on to swim in the Olympics, Florida State. I've had the pleasure of working with Townley Haas at Nova for a little while. I got to coach Charlie Swanson, was his primary coach for a year. Love Tuna. He's a great kid. He's not a kid anymore. He's a big grown man, a big Olympian. But no, the thing that I've noticed over the years is they're not that different than everybody else. I think people have these assumptions that Olympians are this just magical human being who is flawless and they're just like, wow, they're so lucky that they're that talented. And it's really never like that. Every now and then you'll meet an Olympian who they just have that persona and they're just like, yeah, there's something different about that person. But I've coached a lot of people over the years who are something different about that person feel, but they don't turn out to be Olympians. They're just great people. The thing I notice about Olympians is that on a more consistent basis, they're just willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. They're willing to do the extra dolphins off the wall when others are going to complain about it. They're willing to come into the practice when they might have a stuffy nose or they're a little bit exhausted when others would have easily slept in. That's the difference. And when you add up all of those small little increments over a lot of years, and swimming is a repetitive sport over a lot of years, that adds up and it turns into become a gigantic chasm of a difference between your average swimmer and an Olympian, because the Olympian was willing to do it all the time and they just made it their habit.
Oh, I love that. That really resonates with me. Is there anything that isn't out there in the public that may be a little insight into Jonathan Kaplan, like maybe a hobby or something that you enjoy doing?
I just love diving into sports numbers in particular. I'm not a crazy math person, so don't get me into like calculus or anything crazy like that. But simple math I love, and I love just the beauty of sport. So from as long as I can remember, since I was probably about 10 or 11, I collected sports cards. I collected like baseball cards, basketball cards, football. And I took a long time off from the hobby. And I actually my best friend, who we've been best friends since we were 6, we actually met on the swim team. So you never know who you're going to meet, even when you're 6 years old. And he had messaged me a couple years ago. And he said, have you looked up how much your cards are worth? I was like, I haven't done that in a couple decades, but let's go take a look. And it just got me remembering what I loved about the beauty of the pictures of the cards and the statistics that are on the back. And a lot of them will tell you their hometown or maybe a story about their journey and stuff like that. And I've always been fascinated with the journey that other athletes take to get to high levels. Because like I was saying earlier with the Olympians, like you think that it's this magical thing where everything works out perfectly. And sports isn't like that. It's about the failures that get you to become successful, not the other way around. So I like seeing that story. And then the cards are just like a way to capitalize on that. A fun little side note, my best friend, Chris Bogey, and one of my other really good friends that I grew up swimming with in Winter Haven, his name was Dan Ketchum. He and I would collect cards. We'd go to card shows and all this stuff. Dan went on to swim at Michigan, became NCAA champion, and went and won a gold medal for the Olympics in the relay, the 800 free relay. He was on the prelims of the 800 free relay and won gold medal. So my passion for sports still rooted in swimming one way or another, even my passion for cards.
I love that. I just love that. So where do you think you get this passion?
Man, the reason why I coach, and it's the cheesiest answer ever, and I've said it a handful of times in interviews over the years, but I'm like, look, it's cheesy, but it's true. This is who I am. I've always wanted, for as long as I can remember, I want to have the most powerful impact on the largest number of people possible. And there probably are other avenues where I could maybe have an impact on more people than coaching swimming, but then I would lose the level of impact. So I just think that swimming is the one sport out of all sports that mimics the rest of your life. There's a lot that you're going to learn by being a football player, soccer player, tennis player, golfer, whatever, that are going to help you in the rest of your life. But I don't think any of those sports literally mimic the ups and downs that you go through, because you have to learn how to push yourself as an individual, but you have to do it in a team setting. Very few swimmers can start and finish their career by themselves and become successful. So you have to learn to work together as a team, but you're only as good as you work. Very similar to when you go get a job, or you have a boss, or you start a business or something like that. Marriage, a lot of what you learn through the ups and downs of swimming helps you get through the ups and downs of marriage, because inevitably there are ups and downs of marriage. So I've been passionate about that, and that's the reason why I chose swimming. At the end of the day, though, it's personal, but I don't mind sharing because other people deal with loss in their life too. But for as long as I can remember, my parents told me at a young age that I had an older brother who I never had met, and he passed away when he was only about 10 months old. Obviously, extremely devastating for my family and for my parents. But what that did is it put my parents in a situation to adopt, because they weren't going to be able to have another child that essentially wouldn't have the same thing happen. And as tragic as that is, they ended up adopting my sister, and then 3.5 years later, they adopted me. It's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life, was becoming adopted. And if that had not happened, and Joshua, who was my brother, if he had not passed, I would have never been given that opportunity. And so because I have that opportunity, I just can't imagine my life being anything other than I need to kick the heck out of this life, because I've been given this opportunity that essentially someone was sacrificed for. And so literally everything that I do, I'm trying to find the best way that I can have an impact on someone else's life in a positive way. And I'm doing it because of him.
Wow, that is so beautiful. Jonathan, you've had a huge impact on my life. I do not think I would have had the season I had last year, which was the best season I've ever had in probably my whole swimming career. And you sat down with me. You're not paid to coach me. You sat down with me. You went over some splits. You've allowed me to use your resistance bands. You cheered me. I see when I was in lane 1 breaking the 500 free national record, you were standing there with your arms in the air, and I saw you. And hey, I don't think I would have kicked it in on that last 50, which I needed. So it's choking me up to hear your story. It's really beautiful. And you are making a huge impact. And I love seeing the success of this program and then this facility and what you're doing. And I can totally see why it's happening now. And then the last question we always ask is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share with our listeners? Could be anything.
Yeah, sure. First of all, let me go back and say that it was my pleasure getting to watch you break those records. Like it's really inspirational, everything that you've done, and the fact that you're, like we said earlier, willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do. And here you are having the best swimming you've ever had later in your life. Like, that's just an awesome lesson. So I love that you've got an avenue to share that with other people, because you're going to inspire a lot of people for a long time. So just wanted to say that. The other thing for me is this is something that I never thought would really happen. Like, when you think of, I'm a swimming nerd, that's through and through, man. I can tell you some swimming stories, and I know a lot of people, and I've just been, connected to the sport in such an intimate way for a long time. And my role here at SwimRVA has actually shifted a little bit because I was the head senior coach for the first 6 years. And I just promoted our amazing coach, Blake Profit, to be our head senior coach so that I can spend more of my time and energy as the head coach and the director. So it's very different than anything I ever thought I would be doing, because you think of a coach, you're like, you just want to be on the deck and you want to get the recognition for developing the athletes. And I know coaches do that well into their 60s, sometimes 70s. And I think that's awesome. That's where they want to be. When I decided to make this shift, because it was for the betterment of the entire program, I had a lot of coaches. I asked several of my best coaching friends around the country, so what do you think about that? And they're like, are you going to be okay? Are you going to scratch the itch? Are you okay not being on the deck as much? I'm not off the deck yet, but eventually we'll get to that point where I'm not really on the deck as much. And I'm more okay with it than I ever thought I would be, because my group that I'm coaching now is the coaches. We got 27 coaches on this staff. So if I can coach 27 coaches to be better versions of themselves, and they have the ability to literally impact hundreds of kids, then now I have the ability to impact thousands of kids. And even if I don't directly work with every single one of them. Side note to that, I actually do get to work with all the kids now, because at least once a month, I spend time with every single practice group and every single time slot. So I actually know the team better now than I ever have before. So I guess like the lesson for that is, just because you're doing this right now doesn't mean that there isn't a different chapter where you can have a significant positive impact on others. And I'm actually on Instagram a lot now, which is something I never thought I would do. And here I am sharing motivational Instagram reels and things like that I never thought would have an impact. And I literally get people from around the world reaching out and telling me how much they love the reels and stuff like that. So you just never know what's coming up. So be willing to change and alter what you're doing. Don't just do the same thing all the time.
Wow, I love that model. That's very innovative and sounds like stuff that SwimRVA is doing here constantly. Thank you for spending this time with me. I know you have a meeting this morning at 8 o'clock, so it's just been awesome, and we'll continue to watch your success and really appreciate you.
It's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and regardless of whether doing an interview, I look forward to chatting again next time.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for the takeaways.
Hey there, fellow swimmers and water enthusiasts. Dive into the pool knowing you can confidently remove the chlorine after you swim with TriSwim. This gentle chlorine out hair and body care line is the perfect addition to your post-swim routine. Say goodbye to the dry, itchy scalp and say hello to tropical scents and moisturized hair and body. Made with botanicals, proteins, and aloe, this product will leave your hair and skin strong and healthy. TriSwim is the official chlorine out personal care sponsor for Master Swimming. Head over to sbrsportsinc.com and use code MOJO23 for 23% off TriSwim today.
And now, the takeaways.
Jonathan Kaplan, isn't he just uplifting? And that was like 7:30 in the morning.
I guess I'm not surprised after listening to that interview. This guy, I told you off recording that I would like to be his friend. He's influencing me. His desire is, of course, to influence, but he is influencing me through a recording of a conversation with you about swimming. This guy has got a gift, but yeah, I wish I could have been there for the interview.
Yeah. So what was your takeaway from listening?
I loved he opened with something I never heard, which was they have non-mandatory attendance at practice. So basically it has to be fun. His coaches have to be inspiring. The kids have to want to show up because there's no you have to be here. And I love that swimming and even a hard age group type training should be fun. It should be something that you're drawn to because you're going to see your friends and you're going to be inspired by your coaches. And so I really love that. And it's a good reminder that, we can use a honey or a fist, and honey is almost always a better way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that you just cannot put that value on how these kids it takes the pressure off of them. Because I remember when I would wake up and think, oh gosh, I've got to go because I've got 11 workouts a week. I think just taking that pressure off maybe makes you go a little bit more freely and happily. So
Yeah.
I do. I love that too. I love that too. My main takeaway, and then I have a sub takeaway, but my main takeaway is just that Jonathan is one of those lucky people that felt this calling to coach, to inspire people, to help people from a very young age. He was doing cards for his fellow swimmers when he was a kid. He coached all the way through. He's continued his education towards the same goal. He knew what he always wanted to do, and he's been doing it. I love that. Some of us try a million things, and that's one path. But when you do have that calling, I think that he's had this calling, and I think he's been very successful to carry it out.
Yeah, I love that too. I just was chuckling at the idea of him keeping track of his friends and fellow swimmers' stats, even as a young boy. I just love that. I love it. So great.
Yes. And my little takeaway was just how he really is about wanting his swimmers to swim all their life, and that swimming is a lifelong sport. And so that makes me think, if swimming is a lifelong sport for him, coaching, or at least influencing coaches and influencing and staying in this, will definitely be a lifelong sport. So we may have swimmers that are in their 80s, 90s, and 100s, and we probably will see Jonathan doing the same thing in some capacity. And share with us what you said about being a grandparent, because I think that applies here.
What he said was that he was now, instead of coaching directly on the deck, he was coaching as coaches. And I was like, I think a lot of people might look at that as a negative thing if you love to coach. But for him, he had such a great take on it. He's coaching these people who are coaching these kids. It's like being a grandparent. You have that much more influence over all these people. I love that. He's just got such a great attitude about his desire to help people. And he's going to do it. What did he say? I want to influence positively the most people I can. And this is, to coach coaches is even more than coaching individuals.
Yes.
Love that.
I call that cheesy, but it is not cheesy at all. I really liked it.
No, yeah, I did.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I love you,
Kelly. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Champions Mojo podcast. Did you enjoy the show? We'd be grateful if you would leave us a 5-star review on iTunes to help others find us. And we'd also love to hear from you. We're on all social media platforms, or you can reach us at championsmojo.com.